hold of a pretty inexpensive twist dial pen kit, which you can see laid out in order here. And I'm also going to need a pen blank. This one is Coco Bolo, which is courtesy of Drew Anders, a great guy and fellow wood turner who a while back sent me a great selection of wood. So the first step is to mark the lengths at which I need to cut the pen blank, and I use the brass tubes to reference off. Secondly, although not vital, I also mark a line to help me align the two blanks later on. And following that, I can cut those out at the bandsaw. Next up, I have to drill the holes through the pen blanks to accept the brass tubes. Now in this case they measure just under 7mm, and that's so that you can use a 7mm drill bit to drill through the pen blanks. Now there's several methods which you can go about drilling the holes through your pen blanks. Really you just need a method that's going to give you reasonably straight results. A common and quite easy way to go about it is to buy a pen blank vise for the drill press. Now because I didn't want to go out and buy one of these, I'm just using a couple of notched out blocks of wood and my drill press vise to do the same thing. Using this method didn't give perfect results, but they're certainly good enough for this, considering it's going to be a slimline pen and most of the material is actually going to be turned away. So next up I have to glue the brass tubes into the pen blanks, and just before that I'm giving the tubes a quick scuff using some sandpaper. And then I can go ahead and glue the brass tubes into the pen blanks, and to do this I'm using some 5-minute epoxy, although CA glue is also a very popular choice for this. Once the glue had set, the next step was to square off the ends of the pen blanks. Now this operation is usually performed using what's called a barrel trimmer. Now I don't actually have one of these at the moment, although I do intend to get one fairly soon for further pen turnings, but they are very useful in squaring the ends of the pen blanks and flushing the edges of the brass tubes to them. As I said, I don't have one of these, so I just rigged up a system whereby I could use an old Forstner bit to square off the ends of the pen blanks. So here you can see what that process has actually achieved. Now this is really a stage in pen turning which shouldn't be underestimated, and is in fact quite important in achieving a good pen assembly. And now I can move over to the lathe, and I'm mounting the pen turning mandrel, which I'll be using to mount the pen blanks into the headstock of the lathe. First to go on are a couple of bushings, and these are for a slimline pen, followed by the first pen blank, a single central bushing, the second pen blank, and to finish off a few more bushings just to fill out the mandrel until I get to the threaded portion. And I can tighten that all together using the little brass nut. Finally I support the end of the pen mandrel using a live centre in the tailstock. Actually turning the pen is really quite easy. All you have to do is turn down to the same diameter as the bushings. Once I'd achieved close to the final diameter of the pen, I could use some sandpaper to smooth it all out. I started from about 80 grit and worked my way up to 600, and then gave it a final burnish using some steel wool. Next I can apply a finish to the pen, and I'm using 4 or 5 coats of lacquer, although CA glue is also a very popular choice when it comes to finishing pens. And once the lacquer had dried, I could polish the finish using some steel wool and some fine grit sandpapers, lubricated with a bit of microcrystalline wax. I gave the pen a final buff using some fine abrasive powder, although if you have something like a 10,000 grit pad, That would work equally as well. Now it's merely a case of assembling the parts of the pen, and that's done by pressing them together. To do this, I'm just going to be using a quick action clamp, although a bench vise is also a good option. I started out by pressing the twist pen mechanism into the brass tube. Now this is actually not the correct order, and as you can see I should have pressed the pen tip in first. So I can go ahead and press the pen tip in now. And because it took quite a bit more force than I expected, I'm moving over to the bench vise so that I can press the pen mechanism in further. You want to push the twist mechanism in just far enough so that the nib of the pen protrudes just far enough when in use. And finally I press together the clip and the very top of the pen, and then it's simply a case of putting all those parts together.